don't realize is your Fauci's and your Hancocks and your Gates and all these people, they are still just front men.
Yep. If you know their name.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yep. If you know their name. And so when they are deemed, surplus to requirements, or when it gets to a point that, Gates isn't likable. He's not a likable man. Matt Hancock here is not a likable man. Boris Johnson is not a likable man. And so public opinion goes against these people. And so, what you're saying with Fauci, it's almost like they'll be having a conversation in the background of, I'm not sure we can get this through with Fauci, because he's just not, he's not likable. So you get rid of Fauci, you do it publicly, everyone feels like it's a victory. You bring in someone else and they go, yeah. And he does exactly what Fauci would have done.
The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer.
Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, Gareth Icke is joining us. Gareth is the host of the new show, Right Now, available on iconic.com. He is a musician, author, father, and son of longtime freedom fighter David Icke. Gareth has been attending protests and rallies since he was a small boy. He's worked tirelessly in the movement for truth and continues to do so through docuseries, films, books, podcasts, rallies, and speaking engagements. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Naturally Inspired Podcast with Gareth Icke. Thanks so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast today, Gareth. This is so exciting.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, thank you.
How are things where you are at?
I'm at a point now where there's a meme that I saw a few months ago which summed it up perfectly, which was someone's driving and then there's a cow flying. And it's like, I was going to say something, but it's 2020, 2021. So I just like, well, yeah, whatever. It's just, it's a bit like that really here in the UK. It's kind of just one crazy thing after another. But what is good is that, they say that if you never tell a lie, you'll never have to remember anything because it's just, it.
Right.
And they're kind of tripping over themselves quite a bit with that here. So there's a few things that, there's a lot of people, I think, British people generally are, because although like English, Scots, Welsh, they all sort of try and hate each other, but generally we are actually very similar. We have a similar sense of humor and we see the world in a similar way.
Right.
We've kind of gone from that sort of World War II bulldog spirit, to kind of being quite weak, really, unfortunately. But British people have a line. And that line is way further than my line is, to be honest. And it's way further than it should be. The line should have been in March last year. But they do have a line and you can only push them so far. And I think what they said was that June the 21st would be reopening day. And by reopening, everything's normal. So there's no masks, there's no social distancing, no vaccine passports, nothing. Just everyone gets on with their life like they used to.
Wow.
And that date has been touted for God knows how long. So what they did is they said, right, we need to lock down after the summer. They were like, we need to lock down now because that will save Christmas. So you can have Christmas. So we'll lock down in November, then you can have Christmas. And obviously, even though, religious people kind of are in the decline in the UK, people still love Christmas. It's when people get together and families get together and you see old school friends and whatever. So everyone went, okay, fine. So they did. And then they cancelled Christmas, but they cancelled Christmas the day before Christmas Eve. So just to really kind of really stick the knife in people, because people had plans. I remember I was meant to be staying in Cornwall and my dad phoned me and was like, they've changed the rules. So obviously we don't go along with the rules anyway, but where they live on the Isle of Wight, the ferry companies can stop the boats, and they can say, like, where are you from? So it wasn't a case of being kind of, damn the man, I'll do what I like. It was like, well, I need to get on a boat now, because if I'm not allowed on a boat, then I can't see my family. So I raced and cancelled plans and raced and got on a boat and did all that. But what they said was, see, what we'll do is we'll have Christmas at Easter. So we'll lock down Christmas, but you can have it at Easter. And then what they did is they locked down Easter. So, people were getting to a point of, and so they sold them the 21st of June, and it's got nearer and nearer, and pubs have reopened in terms of pub gardens, and then indoor pubs and bars are open now. I mean, you still got to do all the nonsense, but they're open.
Yeah.
And so everyone's looking at the 21st of June, clinging towards it. And now they're openly, they're talking about this new variant's just popped out of nowhere, as it was always going to, because that's always the plan. Yeah. And so now they're talking about, is June 21st going to happen? And what I've seen is a lot of people that have very much gone along with it, that were very much kind of Rona, are now saying, enough's enough. 21st of June, I'm going back to normal, whether you are or not, basically. And that's a lot of people. So
that's good news.
It's brilliant. Yeah. Because what you've had here in the UK, at least, you've probably 10% of people which are like us. And then you've probably got another 10 to 15% of people that are your proper class A bedwetters, the real, the curtain twitchers that are grassing up neighbours. And then you've got this large group in the middle that's kind of like, I don't know what's going on. And that group has kind of more and more have started to go, it doesn't really add up, does it? And, and there's different levels of that. So some think that maybe these measures are just, there is a deadly virus or whatever, but the measures are the government trying to steal more control.
Yeah.
And then there's the other end, which are coming up towards the, the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, and how the whole thing's completely manipulated. Right. So there's different, obviously, levels of that majority, but it's still the majority. Right. And so, that is starting to move towards us now. You've still got your bedwetters, but you will always have them. And I think they've done such a psychological job on people here. It's extraordinary. And I don't want to take my hat off to them, but you kind of have to a bit, because
I know.
They've done great, haven't they, really? I mean, I saw something today, and he was only a young lad. And I know social media is not real life, but he was there, and he was saying, I mean, he must be, I don't know, mid-20s. And he was saying, so even if you believe the narrative, at no risk, basically. And he said, I don't think I'll ever take my mask off. He was legitimately seriously. He was like, even when the government tells me it's fine, I'm still going to keep it on. And I was just like, oh my God, like what
that is very interesting, but we're seeing that here too in the States. It's almost like it's become a fashion trend. I've heard people say, well, I don't have to wear makeup if I can wear my mask. I've heard other people be like, well, I'm just more comfortable with it. And you know what? The flu disappeared.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started. I know.
Right? I know. I'm trying to be so awake with kindness. I'm trying to awaken you with kindness, but at the same time, holy man, it's a rough go.
I know what you mean.
Rough go.
I'm the same, and it's difficult actually. But that is mad that people will wear it just because they don't have to do their makeup.
Yeah,
because that is the equivalent of cutting your legs off, so you don't have to buy shoes. Yes. It is madness. Yes. But I must admit, I'm like you. So we go on these protests a lot, and I will never shout at people in the street to take the mask off ever. Never done it. Never going to do it. You do you, hun. That's my attitude. Yep. I'll leave you alone. If you'll, return the favor and leave me alone, then that'd be great.
Exactly.
And also the kind of choose our side stuff that gets chanted at the police. They've already chosen their side. That ship sailed. That's done. I wouldn't worry about that. So I don't get involved in the divisive stuff. And I do have sympathy for some people, because they have had a psychological job done on them. But like you say, at times it is hard. It is hard, especially if they're being militant.
Yes.
If they're being militant towards others, then my sympathy sort of wanes at that point.
Or if they're trying to convince someone else who may be in that middle portion, particularly with elderly people, right? Because, for us, our one of our elderly family members got vaccinated, and I know that wasn't her decision. Right. There was outside pressure to do that, and so becomes really difficult, because you just know that there was this kind of barrage of information to get that outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like my wife's grandparents are terrified of it. They're terrified of it. And I have nothing but sympathy for them in that sense. But they come from a generation as well where they trust authority.
Yes.
So that's part of it. And then also, they're in the age that you're
at risk.
Trouble. So it's a bit of a, double-edged thing for them. So I get that. But they don't push it on anyone else.
Right.
So they're aware that their, grandson-in-law is on anti-lockdown protests,
right. Running the show.
and they don't say a word, they don't say anything to Gemma, my wife, they don't nothing. And that's fine. I hate the fact that they're terrified of it, but at least they're not forcing anything on anyone else. It's just that's how they are towards it, and that's fine. But you're right, the ones that are telling people to get medical procedures, because I'm not telling them not to. If someone wants to get it, go, please do some research and have a look.
Informed consent.
Exactly. And, have a look at the ingredients and have a look at what they are and what they do. And if at that point you still think that it's the course of action for you, then you do you, hun, that's fine. But don't expect me to go along with it,
Right.
It's very strange how we've gone from you take care of your health, and if you want to eat 20 donuts a day and a bargain bucket, then that's your thing, like it's not going to end well for you, but that's fine.
Right.
And I'll do what I want to do, to all of a sudden I'm responsible for your health.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And I did see a lady say she was doing like a recording, and she said, do you expect me to carry your inhaler for you? And it does feel a bit like that. It's like, you take care of yours. You're vaccinated, you're safe, aren't you? That's fine. So you're fine. And if I die, then that's my problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Like we should carry their risk for them. So like if they eat donuts, putting themselves at risk for diabetes, then we also need to take the medication when we don't eat the donuts.
Exactly.
It's bizarre.
Exactly.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. But that's the term public health has become, I don't know if it's the same over there, but here public health has become a thing. That term never existed before. I never heard people talk about public health as in a public, as in a group.
Right.
It was just healthcare.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm from Canada. I was born and raised in Canada, but I live in the States now. I'm in Colorado, and I've been here for a long time now. But it's interesting culturally to see the response of people. A lot of what you described of the people in the UK is what I'm seeing for people in Canada. And my husband and I joke all the time that if they shut the liquor stores in Canada, that'll be the end. That's when you talk about that line where people have had enough. That's when it'll be enough in Canada. When people shut the liquor stores, that's when people will lose it.
Well, they found that in South Africa. The same thing. They shut the alcohol shops and stuff in South Africa, and there was carnage, and they had to reopen them again.
Interesting. So here in Colorado, at first they thought they were going to shut down the dispensaries for pot, and they did that for like 24 hours, and then whoa, they backed it up and they opened them again. So you could go to the strip clubs, you can get alcohol, and you can go to the dispensaries at one point, but you couldn't go to your local restaurant.
You could go to a strip club.
No food.
Okay, that's all right. It's the food that does it.
Yes, it's the food that spreads the virus. So
it is mad, isn't it? How there's no consistency. And like I found last summer in the speeches that I was doing, because I would made a point with them. I didn't want to put any theories. So I've got lots of theories, but I didn't want to put any. I was like, I'm going to use their data back at them, and so it's I'm in a position where the fact checkers have got no chance. That was my whole attitude towards it.
Yep.
And so. I would quote death figures and whatever, and then I'd have people in my ear going, yeah, but there's no virus, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but what I'm doing is I'm going off their figures. I'm using their figures back at them. And so, that's not what I'm trying to say. There's a conscious reason why I'm doing it.
Yep.
And there was one bit last summer, and I made people thought it was a joke, was that you couldn't go and hug your nan at her house, but you could take your nan to Alton Towers, which is a theme park, and go on a roller coaster with her.
That was true.
That was true. The rules were such that was the case.
Wow.
And you're just like, where is the sense in this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can't go around a house, sit in the room, have a cup of tea, but you can be there, you know, arms flailing next to her, yelling. I don't know why Nan wants to go on a roller coaster, but that's just the madness of it. None of the rules make sense.
Well, who's invested in the theme park? There's your answer.
Well, yeah, that's part of it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let's talk about your new show Right Now. What prompted you to start that right now? And what's it all about? What's the goal with it?
Well, to be honest, we kind of, obviously, I've been doing podcasts for a long time, and we've been making documentaries and things like that here. And what we found was that there's so much incredible information out there, but it's generally done like this. Yep. So it's done over Skype or Zoom or StreamYard or whatever. And so it was kind of like, I saw people's reactions to a lot of stuff. And what you had, it's almost that the kids will eat it up if you package it properly, that sort of attitude. And so you had all these big studios of the mainstream where they all look plush and they all look like this and they do everything professionally. Yeah. And they lie and lie and lie and lie and lie, but it looks good. And then you had all these podcasts where people are putting this incredible information out there, and the masses, so I don't mean people like me and you, but the masses would not really give it as much credence because it's a podcast on YouTube. Yeah. You know, and so it was a case of, well, let's do it their way. You know, let's try and make a show that is as close to the mainstream in terms of the way it's structured, the way it's put together, how it looks. Right. But with I don't even like the term alternative information because it's just information. Right. But yeah, to do that. And so we had a set built here, and we really tried to make it look as good as possible whilst also having a bit of so when the set designers came, it was like, these are the studios that look good, but I also want it to look like we're almost like the French resistance in the Second World War. So you're almost like you're in a bunker, which is what the corrugated iron and the brick and stuff is about, that it's like we're underground trying to bring this information out. And it's funny that when I was trying to get people on the podcast with me, you know, a lot of people I got on, it was great, and I had some really good chats with people. But it was also quite difficult sometimes because you'd say to them, right, do you want to come on my podcast? And they're like, yeah, okay. What is it? And so you'd like send them a link to one or two, but it is just me and them chatting. Yeah. And so you get a few people, which is great, but a few people kind of, oh, I'm a bit busy at the minute. And I was thinking, I'm not sure you'd have said that if it was like, you know, whoever else. And I found that's the case. So since we did the first couple of episodes of Right Now, getting guests now is easy. Yeah. And that's fantastic. And we've actually got lots of people contacting us saying, you know, I know this guy, like I know this person. Someone contacted me last night saying, I've got a BBC whistleblower and they're going to come on next week. Nice. And it was a case of just phoning them up and saying, we're doing Right Now, this is what it looks like, send them a link. And they come back going, yes. And it is almost like the aesthetics have made a difference. Yeah, I'm sure. So that was the plan. Yeah, was to almost just fight them at their own game. Really. Perfect. Well, it looks beautiful. I'm hooked. That's for sure. What I love most about it is you're talking to real people. So yeah. So this is like, okay, like I love how you just said, tell me what's going on around you. Right? Because that gets to the heart of the truth here. We want to know, what are you experiencing? And so some of these conversations you've had already that I want to talk about, the PCR test. You had a chance to talk with a doc about the PCR test, and you found some interesting stuff. It was really interesting. Yeah. The only annoying thing, he was in France and his internet signal was poor. So having explained everything I've just explained about how we wanted it to look like mainstream, it glitched every now and then, which was quite frustrating. But he's along with, I think it's about 10,000 medical professionals now, and there's about 1,000 lawyers that are really going for the PCR test, because it is, in my view, it is their Achilles heel, because it is so ridiculous. The whole thing's based on a scam. Yeah, and the PCR test is absolutely it's the main component. Yeah. Here in the UK, they say it's within 28 days of a positive test. That's not actually true. If you look into NHS documents that are available on Public Health England, it's up to 60 days. So you can legitimately have a test, because you have to take a test for work. You know, I've got friends that have to take tests twice a week for their jobs. So they take it for their work. It's a test that doesn't even test for it and has an insane even if you believe the narrative, an insane false positive number.
Yep.
But if
Like
any of those people,
90-some%, right?
97%.
97, yeah.
I'd push it 3 further personally, but but either way, it has that, and so you can have that test with a 97% false positive, and if you die within 60 days of anything, doesn't matter what, then you're a COVID death.
Oh,
and so you
hit
apply
by a truck?
hit by a truck, fall off a ladder. That happened to a guy in Leeds. Fell off a 12-foot ladder, cracked his head open. COVID death. There's absolutely tons and tons of them. There was one guy in the UK who came off a bike and basically, almost lost his head. Basically, COVID death. And then what they started doing then, and this was a real trick, and it leads back to the end of 2019. Bill Gates, because they always tell us, he shared his 5 books that he's reading. He does that, doesn't he? What on his blog? Like, what's Bill reading? As if anyone cares.
Who cares?
But exactly. But one of the books was called How to Lie with Statistics, and they basically spent the best part of 18 months doing exactly that. And so what you have in the UK, so like I say, within 60 days of a test, you're a COVID death.
Right.
But the other scam was that whenever you go into hospital, you need to have a test. So my wife is due to give birth in August. Now she's allowed to do it without a test, apparently, although they could change those rules. But if I want to be there, which I obviously do, then I have to take a test, which I refuse to do. So I've got a bit of a some stuff to work out. But so if you go in, you have a test. So if I say I break my leg now, I fall down the stairs, I go into hospital, I need to have a test, they stick it up my nose. It's a positive test because 97% false positives.
Yep.
I then am classed as a COVID hospitalization because I'm in hospital having had a positive COVID test. So then when they're showing the statistics, it's like, okay, so yeah, he's gone into hospital. Yeah, he's in hospital with COVID. Well, I'm not. I broke my leg, but they don't say that. And then I then have to have surgery. Someone nicks a vein or an artery, and I bleed out on the table and I die. I am a COVID death. I'm a COVID hospitalization and a COVID death statistically, but I fell down the stairs and I broke my leg. I didn't even have a cough or a runny nose, and so that's how they've done it here. And I'm pretty sure this is global
across the board. Yeah,
because the rules are all coming out of the World Health Organization anyway. So they set the rules of the game.
Yep. And who doesn't want that money, right?
Oh, absolutely.
These hospitals, I mean, they set it up beautifully. Like you said, you got to take your hat off to them a little bit because this was a mastermind, right? If you have anything to do with COVID, it's like a $37,000 payout or something for treating COVID here in the States.
Well,
so why the heck would you not?
Well, yeah, and not only that, but obviously because the way your health system's set up there, because they cancelled all the surgeries. Yeah. So the hospitals are not making any money.
Oh yeah, they were they're desperate, furloughing doctors, furloughing. I mean, this is firsthand information I get from people that work there. Like they were furloughing people. There's nothing to do.
Imagine that in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Furloughing doctors.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's nonsense, but that's what it was, wasn't it? Is it like 6,000 or something if they diagnosed a pneumonia, but it was 13.5 if they diagnosed COVID. Well, if I'm running a hospital and all my elected surgeries are all cancelled, so I'm not getting any money from Medicare for cancer surgeries or heart surgeries or whatever, and just put COVID down, and how
am I going to keep the lights on?
And it's going to make me $7,000 extra.
Yep.
Yeah, put COVID down. Yeah, do that. And then what was it? 39,000 if they went on a ventilator. Just put them on a ventilator. Put them on it for 5 minutes. Done. Yep. $39,000. We know that went on in New York from whistleblowers that were saying that they were putting them on ventilators and killing people. Didn't need
that
to be
makes me sick because I think the ventilator actually killed people, in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It blows out the lungs.
Yes.
Completely.
It was exactly the opposite of what they needed to do to help the body get rid of, work through what it needed to work through. 100%. It was that's just disgusting. The other thing I wanted to mention about the PCR test was now that we're vaccinating, woohoo, vaccination. My favorite.
Oh yeah. What it was all about.
I said the mask, as soon as the mask came out and I realized, that the mask didn't work for any kind of stopping any particle that small, I immediately knew, okay, this is about vaccines. And then I just went into full mode, like no mask. I'm not wearing a mask. I was trying to just model that everywhere. Don't wear a mask, doesn't work. But, didn't work that well. There's still, everybody here wore a mask and continues to.
Wow.
For the most part. It's getting a little better. Yesterday at the grocery store, there was probably 10 or 15 people not wearing a mask, opposed to 2 weeks ago, we were the only ones.
Yeah, that's decent numbers. That's better.
Yeah.
I mean, here it depends where you go. If you go to the big supermarkets, you're probably the only one, or maybe there's another person, and it happened to me last week. There was me and there was two others, and the three of us, we don't even know each other, just ended up having a conversation in the aisle, because you just gravitate towards each other, don't you?
Yep.
But in the local shops, it's a lot of people now don't bother.
Good.
They don't
That's
bother.
good to hear.
Especially in my village, because people know it's nonsense.
I bet.
They've started to come around to it.
They live by you guys. I mean,
well, the thing is, to be honest, what did it is I live in a tiny village just outside Derby, which is a city in England, and everyone knows everyone in my village. Basically, everyone knows everyone. There's been no deaths in my village, thankfully. Everyone knows everyone. But then on Public Health England, it said that there'd been 9 deaths in my village from COVID in the last, since the beginning of this. Oh. And so what? And so what? Like, that's not even a redesignation in terms of a pneumonia or whatever. Like, literally 9 people haven't died. That's not happened. Like I say, it's just a handful of houses. It's literally one road. And so that's kind of woke a few people up. So this is just nonsense.
Again,
so,
like you said, getting tripped up in their own lies.
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Because you can get away with it in a city. Because Derby's not compared to the USA. It's tiny. It's about 260,000 people in Derby. So you can live in one area of Derby and hear that there's been 10,000 COVID deaths. And that might be happening in that area. There's lots of different, there's quite a large sort of what you call basically an Asian area. And then there's an Eastern European area. And then there's the more affluent areas. And then there's the kind of more sort of council housey areas. So you could, unfortunately,
it's conceivable.
Well, yeah, because the areas, annoyingly, they don't tend to mingle, which is obviously a bit, rubbish, but they don't. So you could think, well, maybe that's happening in that area then. We're lucky here. Whereas when you're in a village, it's no, that's just not happening.
I've seen everybody today, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
So they've now, because they started the vaccinations, they've lowered the cycles for the PCR test. So they used to be as high as 40, right? They would cycle at 40. And now, because of the vaccinations, they've this information's right there, right, for anyone to read, that they've now lowered it to 28. Because
and that's only for vaccinated people, isn't it? They're testing them differently. I read that as well.
Yeah, because they don't want the breakthrough cases, right? Because then it becomes more apparent, even though it says right there on the packaging that it doesn't prevent transmission. They still don't want people to think that it doesn't prevent transmission, even though it says it doesn't prevent transmission.
Yeah, but they know most people won't look at it. That's what's pathetic about it. But here in the UK, it's 45 cycles. It's been 45 cycles the whole time on the NHS.
45.
Yeah, you say that to people and they go rubbish, and then you send them a link to the NHS website where it tells them the cycle threshold, and then they don't say anything after that. I find that when people call you something and then you give them the data, they never seem to reply. Weird, but
it's weird.
They did the same here. Like, and I even said, like, because it became apparent it was about the vaccine. Yeah, and so I said, look, when was this? I mean, we're talking probably November. I said, have a look for subtle differences in either the way they test or the way they record deaths and cases once the vaccine's being rolled out, because they'll do something. Yeah. And that's not trying to say I'm clever. It's just, it's that obvious that that's what they're going to do.
That's what they do. Yeah. And
that's what they did. And they, as soon as the rollout started, when Biden got inaugurated as well, I noticed that was the same day. That amused me. The World Health Organization obviously sent out instructions to laboratories in terms of the way they were doing their cycle thresholds, and so they were bringing them down slightly, and so they'll but again, the genius of the PCR test, you can up the cycles or down the cycles. You can do whatever you want. So it's in their interest now to bring the cycles down because they want to
Yep.
show the cases and stuff are coming down because the vaccine's working.
Yep.
But that can't go on forever because otherwise everyone will go, well, we'll open everything up now and then. So
Yep.
what they'll do is just every time they get a new variant, you know,
Yes.
a variant of nothing is still nothing,
Yep.
but they'll just smack the threshold back up again.
Yeah.
You can just see that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And,
which
then
brings us to India.
yes, you talk to people in India, they laugh at you.
Yeah. So your interview with the journalist Johan Tengra was really good. And I listened to it twice because there was so much there because he's boots on the ground. Not only that, but he's a trained journalist, so he knows what to look for. He dropped some big bombs there. I saw a couple of the videos come out, like you played one of them with the lady there who was saying, you know, look, she pans her camera around. This isn't happening. This is the stuff that we need to pay attention to, right? Because this is the truth. The stuff we're getting told, you know, the variant. What was your take on what he had to tell you as in terms of the testing? Okay, how they're using the testing there, because that's a huge weapon in this war, the testing.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a bit of a perfect storm from what I could see there. So you've basically for a long time you've been controlling the food system, and so there's a huge amount of poverty in India anyway. I mean, I don't think people even grasp the level of it.
Right.
And so the amount of death is high anyway. And then you bring in the fact that their healthcare system is funded by, I think it's like 1% of their GDP or something. Bear in mind, Britain's isn't great, and Britain's is about 14% or something. You know, it's not even comparable. Their healthcare system is dreadful. And then you have the fact that they shipped out a job lot of their oxygen and exported it, and then claimed, oh, we're short of oxygen. Well, yeah, you've got rid of it all.
Yeah, there's a real shortage of supplies suddenly. Well, not suddenly, probably always, but even more so suddenly.
Exactly, but that's how they frame it. So we had it a lot in the press here, the fact that these hospitals are running out of oxygen. And you're like, in your mind, you fill in the blanks, which you're meant to, which is like, oh my God, they must be using lots of oxygen. It's like, well, or they've just exported loads of it and they've got a lack of supply. They also had the vaccine rollout when they didn't need it either, which was extraordinary. So again, even if you believe the narrative, we shared a story on the website, and it was a mainstream article saying basically what has happened with India, because this is mad. Like, it's a massive country. The cities are insanely overpopulated in terms of people just living on top of each other. It would, in theory, be an absolute breeding ground for a viral, illness. And yet it's not affecting anyone. This is crazy. And then they rolled out the vaccine. And I even read an article where they were questioning that. I mean, they were doing it in the pro-vaccine narrative, but what they were saying was, why is India getting all these vaccines when they don't need it, when there's other nations that need it? You know, that was their angle on the story. And as soon as they rolled it out, then all of a sudden people started dropping like flies.
Yes.
So you've got mass starvation and malnutrition. You've got a vaccine rollout, which is making people ill. You've got a lack of oxygen based on the fact that you've exported a load of it. And then the other thing as well is they separated COVID, and again, this is where the test comes in, and non-COVID wards. So when they're saying there's not enough beds, there's more than enough beds, but you'll have one ward with, say, 20 beds in it, and one ward with, say, 20 beds in it, and you've got 30 people. Well, that's fine. You have 15 in each, and you've still got 5 spare. That's not a problem. But if you're PCR testing everyone left, right, and center, and all of a sudden they go, oh, we've got 45 people that have had a positive test. Well, then
we only have 20 beds. Yeah,
exactly. That ward sits empty, and that one is just jam packed full of people, and everyone's going, oh my God, they're in the corridors. It's like, well, yeah, but you could put some in there. And so again, it's a bit of a perfect storm. And then obviously the media is always there to tell us everyone's dying.
Yeah. I had a thought about it because, this has Fauci written all over it. Fauci has some nefarious dealings in the past with AIDS and sending factor 8, overseas when he knew it was tainted and killed people. Because of that, he was involved in all of that. And then when I read the story that they were sending AstraZeneca over to India, that piqued my interest because AstraZeneca has been the most banned I think it's in 21 countries now that they've banned it. And we continue to see blood clots and problems with it. And they dumped a whole pile of that over there in India.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've only just seen the beginning of that, by the way, as well.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of doctors that were speaking out against this for no benefit either. Destroys their careers.
I know. To question why these people would come forward I can't even understand. Well, why would they do that? Well, exactly. Why would they do that? They're ruining everything they've built up.
But it's the same as like you said with the lady in India, and there's lots of people like that. I've seen lots of videos of people in the street. There was a guy the other day going, what they're telling you is not true. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
And you look at it and go, right, so what is in it for the government and the British media to tell us that we're all going to die? It's like, right, well, quite a lot. This guy in India, he isn't getting anything out of it. Do you know what I mean? He's not getting anything out of it. He's
just looking around going, this is bullshit. Right?
Yeah. You know, I knew India was nonsense when I posted something about the variant, and a friend of mine in India replied saying, this is hilarious because all we're getting over here is about the UK variant. As if it's like they're exchange students. Do you know what I mean? They've swapped. It's just, you just lying to people.
Yeah. Whoa, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just getting more and more ridiculous. And Fauci's a very dark entity.
Yes,
that's for sure.
Yeah.
He's
what do you make of them trying to kind of take him out now? Because we see all this stuff now that where people are actually like Rand Paul here in the U.S. has come under. He's really attacked him, rightfully so. But that's starting to get some traction. But you and I both know everything's planned.
Oh yeah, exactly. I think they also once a useful idiot has ceased to be useful, they're just an idiot. And so they'll, it'll be the same here with certain people here, people like Matt Hancock. I know he thinks that he's going to end up with a statue of himself in London, but he won't. He'll be thrown to the wolves in the end. Yeah. And I think that's even happening with Bill Gates. We're talking about the Epstein stuff, which we should have been talking about, a decade ago. And some people were, but it's what people don't realize is your Fauci's and your Hancocks and your Gates and all these people. They are still just front men.
Yep. If you know their name.
Well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yep. If you know their name. And so when they are deemed, surplus to requirements, or when it gets to a point that, Gates isn't likable. He's not a likable man. Matt Hancock here is not a likable man. Boris Johnson is not a likable man. And so public opinion goes against these people. And so, what you're saying with Fauci, it's almost like they'll be having a conversation in the background of, I'm not sure we can get this through with Fauci, because he's just not, he's not likable. So you get rid of Fauci, you do it publicly, everyone feels like it's a victory. You bring in someone else and they go, yeah. And he does exactly what Fauci would have done. It's, and I think that's a lot with what's going on with this whole bioweapon stuff. I don't buy the bioweapon stuff. It's a level 4, biosecurity lab, which is the highest level, and it managed to release the seasonal flu. If something's coming out of a bio lab, you don't need to fix the death numbers with a dodgy test and fix death certificates.
Yeah. Everyone's dead.
Everyone's dead. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. And also, people dropped dead on the street in China, didn't they? And then never happened anywhere else, which is weird. And then, when there's a lot of freedom of information requests coming out in the UK at the minute, and obviously you can redesignate death, but you can't create bodies. I mean, you can once the vaccine's rolled out fully, but last summer you couldn't invent the bodies. And so what they did is they went, do you know what? Instead of doing the COVID death figures, which are all tainted because, like I say, fall off a ladder, run over, whatever, we're just going to ignore that. Let's have a look at the burials and cremations. And so that's what they've done. And county after county after county after county, burials are either the same, ever so slightly more, or in a lot of them less than they were over the previous 5 years, which makes no sense. Right. Makes no sense at all, and again, that doesn't, a bioweapon that doesn't kill anyone. But what the bioweapon does is, whilst you've got those people that are always going to question the government, they're always going to question the narrative, they're definitely going to question bat soup and all that sort of nonsense. So they're going, well, something's not right, something's not right, something's not right. So you give them something I knew it was something. It's a bloody bioweapon. I
Oh.
knew it was something. But if it's a bioweapon, you've still got a deadly virus. You still need lockdowns. You still need masks. You still need vaccines.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? So you actually keep the narrative alive
Yeah.
completely, you know. And I thought
And you've
about it.
satisfied their curiosity.
Exactly. So I thought about it in an analogy of, I've been away for a weekend with the guys. I've been drinking too much. I didn't answer my phone a couple of nights. My wife knows something happened, right? Now, what happened was I had a dreadful, you know, I was very naughty in one of those strip clubs that's still open, and you know, went back to a hotel and did all sorts of horrible, ridiculous things that a married man should never do. So my wife suspects. She knows something went on. Now, if I tell her that, yeah, this is what happened, I'm done and I'm out of my ear. Obviously, and rightly so, the divorce papers are in the post.
Right.
But if I tell her, well, okay, I had a couple of beers and this girl tried to kiss me and I kissed her back and I didn't pull away quick enough. You know, something ridiculous like that.
Right.
I knew something happened. I knew it. My
Right.
spidey senses told me that something happened when you were away. I knew it. You're a cheat. You're blah, blah. But it's not as bad, is it? I can
Right.
work back from that and I can apologize and I can buy lots of flowers and grovel and grovel and grovel and I can save my marriage.
Right.
She's happy because she's found out what happened, but she didn't really. And it feels a bit like that, the bioweapon. It's kind of just give them something so it satisfies the fact that I knew there was a conspiracy. I knew it. But not really the full level of it. And actually nothing.
That's what
really
I'm
changes.
concerned about. Like if Bill Gates and Fauci become the fall guys and they're the evil ones and everything gets pinned on them, then the truth will stop there. Right.
Exactly.
When we know this goes way deeper and way broader. And how do we ever fix anything if we can't root this stuff up?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Is to not allow the wool to be pulled over our eyes. And if we hear something that we don't like and don't agree with, then we question it. But if we hear things that satisfy our pre-existing perception, then we just go with it, and we shouldn't do that either. And that's I think again what the bioweapon will do. A lot of people will just be satisfied with that, as opposed to going, well, actually the people that are telling us it's a bioweapon are the same people. Why would they confess it?
Yeah.
Why would they all of a sudden change and all of a sudden tell us that we're right? And that's not, you know. And so I think that's part of it, is just to not stop. And that goes with like Epstein and all that sort of stuff as well, because you've got with Epstein like one of the world's biggest, you know, child traffickers and also like manipulators, government manipulators. The fact they had all the cameras in those rooms catching people in all sorts of, you know, so they can then blackmail them later and all this sort of stuff. You know, he was working with Mossad, and then you go, that question that people always ask, God, how does a country as small as Israel get whatever it wants in terms of, you know, different governments? And you're like, well, if he's working for Mossad and he's catching people in all sorts of positions, you know, you're kind of going to get what you want, really. You know, it's very clever. It's very clever. But all we get here is obviously he's dead, which part of me actually doesn't really believe he is. I don't know why. I just think he's probably on a beach somewhere. But even if he is dead, he certainly didn't kill himself.
No.
But all we hear here is like, oh, you know, Prince Andrew, and he sort of was having sex with a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And I'm going, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that honestly it? That he had sex with a 16-year-old. This guy is a raging paedophile. He's trafficking kids. He's doing all this, and all we're getting out of it is he might have had sex with a 16-year-old.
One relationship, one time.
Yeah, just the one time. Yeah, just total nonsense. Of course it is, but it's enough to just placate a little bit people.
Yeah. Well, look at how you know, since the pandemic, Ghislaine has we hear nothing, right? There's been no updates, really, like tiny little pieces here and there, maybe. But really, no, it's like all disappeared.
No, well, she's Mossad as well. Her dad was Mossad, Robert Maxwell. He actually owned Derby County Football Club, the city that I'm in at the minute, Derby, the team I've supported. He owned Derby when I was a kid, and he was horrific. Wow. He because he's just, I mean, he was known as the bouncing Czech, because he's obviously from Czech Republic originally. So he's known as the bouncing Czech because he's just dodgy geezer. And he just rinsed the club completely. And obviously he, you know, a Mossad agent has written a book saying how they murdered him. And he was then buried at the Mount of Olives, which is an unbelievable place for a crook like him to be buried. So he obviously was holding some status, and obviously she's his daughter. The boat that he apparently died on is called the Lady Ghislaine. It's named after her. So the idea that she wouldn't be connected in with all that is laughable, really.
Yeah. Oh, and do you think anything will come out?
If we keep digging.
Yeah.
If we keep digging, because that's the key. Like I say, where you get a few nuggets and you accept them,
right?
And it's like, I think especially as the alternative media, which again is a term I don't like because it's just the media. It's doing what the media should have been doing but isn't.
Right.
As it gets bigger and grows, and there's so many more people out there that are asking questions, then hopefully that's what will happen. And I know people like Whitney Webb do fantastic work in this exact area, and they just won't shut up, which is what we need, really, just to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And when they give us a couple of little nuggets, like they did here in the UK with the CSA inquiry into elite paedophilia. I mean, we were talking prime ministers and leaders of industry, and we got chucked a couple of like Z-list celebrities from the 80s that were on kids' TV. And that's, and it was just like they thought it would just be enough.
Right.
They'd have to throw them to the wolves. And a couple of them were innocent as well and had their lives ruined. Freddie Starr being one of them, who was quite a funny guy in the 80s. He died alone in a little villa in Spain because he couldn't come back here, even though he was completely exonerated and he hadn't done anything wrong. But,
I think it's important that we tell their stories for sure. I've had a couple of people on the podcast, Kathy O'Brien. Yeah, I've spoken with her, and another gal named Asia, both victims of satanic ritual abuse. And 5 years ago, I think people were like, "Oh, that's whatever. That's quite a story." And now, though, I think the average person, at least if they don't understand it fully, they're thinking about it now.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way.
We've come way further than I thought we probably would, but then in other ways we've almost gone backwards. It's quite a difficult one, certainly in areas of the truth movement where people have been on board with all this stuff that we're talking about for years, decades even, and then the Rona came along and they all disappeared and they all bought the whole story.
Really?
And you're looking at them going,
where have you been?
You haven't, like, you're being serious. And like, there's a lot of people on the left, particularly in the UK, where, they're very much against the 1% and they rail against the 1% and they're all part of like the Occupy movement and all these things. And they would go along with this. They were voting for Labour under Corbyn with the tagline of "for the many, not the few," because that's how it's been, just the few, the 1%.
Right.
That are then going, oh, so all the governments got in on it together, did they? And they decided. And it's like, well, is there a 1% or not? Because if there is a 1%, as you said, there is for decades, then yes, they're all in on it. That's what the 1% is. That's the point. But they all, kind of, it's very strange. But in terms of the satanic stuff, I think people have had their eyes open to just how dark entities people are. And so because this year and the last 18 months has been so insane, again, come back to the meme of the flying cow, anything's possible now. And so, like, you're right. If you'd have said to someone 5 years ago about satanic, you'd be like, well, whereas now it's like, yeah, that's completely.
It could probably be.
Yeah, exactly. Because nothing's off the table now.
Right. Israel, you had a great talk about Israel on Right Now as well. And the one thing that stood out for me with that talk, because I've listened to other things about it as well, is that I think people need to really focus on the fact that Palestinians and Jews live together every day, right? And they get along every day. They go to work together, they go to school together. And now all of a sudden, you've got attacks right in the street. And this gentleman you were talking to was talking about how fabricated it feels. Yeah.
I think there's a big issue as well where people, particularly in the UK, and I know they do it in America as well, any criticism of Israel, any comment on Israel is a criticism of Jewish people.
Yep, anti-Semitic. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a protection racket that the Israeli government use. And, I was on anti-war marches when Tony Blair was taking Britain into Iraq and into Afghanistan and all these places. I mean, I'm anti-British.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I'm anti what the government is doing.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the Israeli, you don't like Jews. It's like, no, I'm talking about government, mate.
Yep.
And obviously it's a difficult situation there because obviously they have forced conscription. So, regular people, like friends of mine that are out there, they don't want to be involved in the IDF and the IOF, but they end up because they have to. You have to do your national service as you used to have to do in the UK a long time ago.
Yep.
So it muddies the waters a bit, but you don't hear stories that like Gal, who you're talking about, you don't hear his side a lot.
No.
But Palestinians don't either. Palestinian supporters here in the UK, they don't hear, as far as they're concerned, because it's what the media says, that 80% of Israelis support the brother, and it's like, no, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
These people are stuck. That's the real feeling I get. It's like, and I'm starting to feel that way here in America. Like, not nearly, obviously, it's not as like it is there, but in a way, it feels that way here. Like, I don't want anything to do with you people. Your election's a joke. Like, your laws go completely against my beliefs. Like, their laws will change my life completely. I don't want to take the vaccination. I have a little farm. They're trying to get rid of anything like that. Anything self-sufficient right now. They're attacking with regulation. And so I just like tap out, peace out. I want off this.
I'm the same. I mean, politics is a charade anyway. I mean, I'm not political in that sense in terms of political parties anyway. It's that whole thing that if voting made any difference, they wouldn't let you do it. But I'm politically homeless, and I have been for a very, 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 very long time.
Yeah.
And you look at Israel, you've got a choice between what Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, who said that he'd like to bomb Gaza back to the Stone Age. So who are you choosing? It's a psycho or a psycho. There's no choice there at all. Here in the UK, you've got the Conservative Party, which are obviously, they're in charge now. They're pushing the lockdowns. They're pushing there. But if you wanted to vote for the Labour Party, who are the supposedly alternative, they want more lockdowns and more draconian rules. So you're like, I've got nothing then. Do you want AIDS or cancer? Your choice. Which one do you want? And so you go, well, I don't want either. And then you have that sort of ridiculous comment, which you get sometimes. Well, if you don't vote, you don't have any position to complain. Yeah. And you're like, well, no, I'm the one person that has the position to complain because I've not taken part in this nonsense.
Yeah.
I've not given it my time or I've not validated it.
Yeah.
Because it is nonsense. Of course it is. Complete nonsense.
Yeah, it's so frustrating at this point. There seems like there's no difference. I thought that the U.S. would have done better if we'd have been able to keep Trump in, just because I thought he was more for freedom. But like you said, it's both. It's all planned out. So I don't even know what's going to happen. It's so crazy here right now. They got all these recounts going on. My concern is that no matter if there's some kind of turnover, then we'll be at civil war.
100%. But that's what they want anyway.
Yes. Well, that's what it feels
exactly
like,
what they want for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they want. They've spent, the last few years doing that. Like they used Trump to rip the US apart because there's no middle ground with Trump from what I can see. You love him or you hate him.
Yeah.
And that's like, I'm rarely.
Well, I don't know him.
No. But
I'm like, I don't really know. I don't know what his game is yet. I'm just like, I don't know.
Nah, you very rarely see someone go, he's right. It's either like, yes, I'm pro, or no, I hate him.
Yeah, you're right.
They did the same here with Brexit. They used Brexit to absolutely rip the UK apart. And, this is happening all over and it's completely intentional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, I don't know. They're saying, by, I think in another 30 days or whatever, they'll have results for one of the states turning it over for Trump. And that frightens me because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to start the domino effect for the other states. And then where are we going to be at if there's a turnover? Because if there's a turnover, they're going to march out all their little minions from under the guise of BLM and Antifa. And we're going to be fire in the street here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Buy popcorn.
Yep.
It'll be crazy. Yeah, it'll be crazy. Absolutely, it will.
Yeah. So one last thing I wanted to ask you about is the cyber pandemic. Is this what's coming? Is that
It
really
seems to
coming?
be. It seems to be. Yeah. I mean, this is another thing where Whitney Webb's done fantastic work, and
Yeah.
the Last American Vagabond and organizations like that have been talking about it for a long time. It's basically they've been running drills on it. The same people that ran drills on COVID, that run drills on 9/11, that run drills on 7/7, Boston bombings. There's always a drill, and so the cyber pandemic is the latest one. So, and then you look at these hacks on these pipelines.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask
and it's,
about.
you know, you can basically just drop people like that into deprivation, in terms of not being able to heat your home, in terms of not being able to, you can break down the food supply, and
And it's such a blanketed excuse to use. Well, we've been hacked, because the average person doesn't really undernd what that means.
What that
right?
means. Exactly. And also, how can you or me or Dave across the road, when they say, oh, we've tracked it down to Russians, it's normally going to be Russians or Iranians or Chinese. It'll be one of those three, won't it? Of course it will.
Right.
How can you validate that? If they say we've been hacked by Russian hackers, how on earth can we find out that they haven't? And that's the thing. It's disconcertingly vague, and that's the whole point.
Right.
And so if, again, this, could be part of this whole lab theory. If American people believe that the Chinese leaked this, and that's what's destroyed your economy and killed all these people or whatever, and then the Russians have hacked these pipelines, which have led to people freezing to death in their houses, and then the Iranians have hacked something else which has brought down the food supply, so people are starving in Delaware, mate. Like, if you did a poll on the support for an invasion, I reckon most Americans would go for them.
Yep.
And that
is that the end goal, you think?
Well, just I mean, nothing changes the world more than a war, although the pandemic's trying to do a decent job of it. But you look at Europe, particularly before the First World War, and then you look at Europe before the Second World War, even completely different place, even down to the maps. And the concentration of power, out of the Second World War, you had a massive centralization of power that came out. You had things like the UN and NATO, all these things came out of war.
Yep.
So it can never happen again.
And you can't build it back better if you don't break it down to nothing.
Exactly that. Exactly. You'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. And you'll only be happy because we told you you're happy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you think that people will lose internet and such?
It's a difficult one, because I think they need the internet to pump people psychologically full of nonsense. Because, and that's another reason why they want the pubs and stuff closed, because I found a lot during the summer when people got to chatting, you share your own experiences, which is there isn't anything going on.
Right. Still don't know anyone.
No, still don't know anyone, and they don't want that. I know of two people, and both have had the death certificate contested by the family. One was terminal with cancer and actually lived longer than the time he was given left to live, and the other guy is a friend I went to school with. His dad was just had 1,000,001 things wrong with him and was very ill for a long time.
Right.
So they're the only two I know, and like I say, both families contesting the death certificate. So. Do you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people, and obviously I've had a lot of people come to me with all this stuff. I've been at marches with hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm not even had a runny nose. So to answer your question, I think if they're winning the narrative, the internet stays. I think if they start to lose it badly, they could cut it off, because it's how people are communicating. Right.
That'll be interesting. So what is your date of reopen? June 21st?
Yeah, it will never happen. It will never happen. They need to release a little bit, because it's like anything, if I'm crushing you like that, in the end, I'm going to crush you. And then what's left is someone who's got nothing left to lose, who therefore has got no reason to give a monkeys and is actually going to fight. Whereas if I can just crush you, but just give you a little bit of release, and then I'll go back to it. And that's what these things are. Just lift restrictions a little bit, let people blow off a bit of steam, let Dave go and have a pint with Steve for a bit, it'll be fine. And then bang, lock them down again. And
that's what we're seeing, I think, across the globe, right? I was just talking with Max Egan, who is he's in Australia. And he said similarly, like things are pretty loose there. They've got a little bit more freedom right now. That kind of thing is going on there. Now you're saying the same thing there. I've seen more people without masks here now. The governor has come out and said, okay, we can lift this mandate. But his numbers for vaccination are really low. Are you guys getting incentivized for taking the shot over there? Because like our governor now is giving away $1 million.
We've not got to that point, but the incentive here is that you get your life back, that you can go to the pub again, you can go to football again, you can go on holidays again and do all that kind of stuff. But then what's funny is then at the same time, they admit that, well, actually, if you're stupid enough to download Track and Trace, but even if you've had both shots and your Track and Trace pings that you've been near someone who's tested positive, you still have to self-isolate for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they're saying that's going to be the case even after June the 21st. So it's not you've got the vaccine to get your life back.
Yeah.
Foolishly.
Yeah.
And then they're openly telling you that you're not. I mean, it is ridiculous. But I think what it will do is it will. I mean, there's a big protest in London on Saturday. That'll be upwards of 1 million. That.
Yeah, what are your numbers like at these protests? Because of course we're seeing online. The only thing we see that's real, is Instagram footage. Because they're basically pitching it here like a few hundred people.
Hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. Yeah, I mean, I've been on protests most of my life.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, against the criminal justice bill and the poll tax, and then on pro-Palestinian marches. Sort of every 2 years when Israel decides to start firing bombs in, and nothing like the numbers that these are now. Wow. I mean, they're enormous. And there was one a couple of weeks ago, but it was on the day when they were happening all over the world. So they were happening all over the UK as well. So we went to London because I'd already agreed to go. And then it turned out there was some big ones in Manchester and Birmingham, which are closer to me. So it was like, God, that's annoying. But so I went to London expecting probably about 50,000 because obviously I knew that lots of people that normally travel down are doing them in their own cities. Yeah. And it was still hundreds of thousands. Wow. So this week will be like Saturday will be insane. It'll be insane because there's a lot more people joining it now because people are waking and it's getting bigger. I mean, I remember when I spoke in London in September, October, it was about 45,000, but the protest before that was 600. And
so it's like just compounding. Yeah.
Bang. Yeah. As people have just kind of gone, it's nonsense, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is nonsense. Yeah. And
who's speaking on Saturday over there?
There's no speeches. What tends to happen is you'll get one or two that will take bullhorns and sort of stand on a beer crate and do a little bit of an impromptu thing. But generally, they're making it quite difficult here for organisers. So if you've organised it, you're
the target probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's 7 organisers from the ones in the summer that are in court at the minute that are fighting, and then obviously they've crowdfunded money to help pay for solicitors and lawyers and stuff to fight it, and the banks have now miraculously frozen the accounts of those 7 people, so they can't access those funds to pay for the law. Yeah, so they've obviously done that off instruction from the government. So that's the fascist country we live in now.
Yeah. And that's what's coming with your health passport. That's what people need to understand. They can already do that if they want to. Our governments can already have that power to freeze accounts and such. But when you agree to the health passport, what you're doing is you're actually giving them permission to do stuff like that.
Of course you are. Yeah, and also with the amount of jobs that have disappeared, they're actually trialing universal basic income in Wales at the minute, trialing it as if it wasn't the plan all along.
Yeah.
But people go, well, I don't see that's a bad idea, and you go, okay, but is it a bad idea if you have that based on X, Y, and Z? Because it's not going to come without.
Oh no, you're going to jump through all kinds of hoops. You're going to have your vaccinations. You're going to have your kid in a certain school. You're going to have. I mean, you name it. It's endless.
Well, it's moving just towards the social credit system, which they have in China. And when you talk to people about that, people haven't got a clue, as if that would happen. What you're talking about, and you go, right, okay. So 2 years ago in China, if your social credit wasn't high enough, you couldn't go on an aeroplane or a train or in certain shops or in certain places. So that's not some conspiracy theory. That's already happening. In fact, that was already happening before this nonsense.
Yes,
it's what they want. To basically smoke out people that don't comply
That's
to
right.
the point where you comply or you don't exist.
Can't function.
Yeah, you can't do anything. No.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people here are buying up land to fight back and to just go, do you know what? We're going to fight you for as long as we can, and we're going to try and bring you down. But if it gets to a point, then that arm is not coming out for the needle. So this is my plan B, which is that we will have our own society.
Yeah. I'd like to see more of that over here. Because that's certainly the way we feel. We're like planting gardens and, getting animals and doing whatever we can with that exact strategy. We're going to fight you as long as we can.
Exactly.
But that's not happening. So where can people connect with you?
Well, for now I'm on Twitter, which I keep.
You're
I wake
still
up
on Twitter?
I know exactly. It's mad.
That's possible.
I check it like most mornings, expecting it to not let me in, but at the minute I'm there. So I'm on Parler and Gab and just under my name. But obviously, as far as I'm concerned, I don't like Twitter. It's it's the same as all of them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you can just get more information out there to certain people. Those that are asleep are asleep, and those that are awake are awake. But there is a huge majority that have maybe got one eye open, or at least sort of going, stirring a little bit, And if you can get some information to them, and to make, if people that feel like giving up, like when I was a PT, which I haven't been for about 18 months, but when I was PTing at the gym near me, just a bit of freelance stuff on the side, I was the eccentric guy. I mean, I got on with all the other PTs, like great, but I was always the eccentric guy, like just a bit different, in terms of the way I viewed the world and things like that. And they were very straight-laced. And now I go in there to train and I talk to them all. They're all in WhatsApp groups. They're all in Telegram groups. They're all sharing information. None of them are having the vaccine. They're all, and you're like,
That's great.
And all that came from was just having conversations with people.
Yeah.
And just saying, have you seen this? And not even like preaching and telling people how to live their lives, just saying, have you seen that?
Yep.
And it does make a difference, and sometimes, people will tell you to jog on, but I've found lately that a lot more people are open.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't add up.
Yep. None of it. No. If you take everything that's going on and you try to add it up towards the outcome of health, none of it makes sense. But if you take everything that's happening and you try to add it up to the Great Reset, it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Ticks every single box.
Yep.
Ticks every single box. And they tell you. Klaus Schwab's called The Great Reset, COVID-19, The Great Reset. He's not trying to hide it.
No. So you're on Twitter and you guys got a new app coming out, it looks like too, right?
Yeah, it's on Android already. The Iconic app. Apple won't take it, obviously, but obviously you'll be able to download that directly from iconic.com, and then you can watch all the series and documentaries and films and obviously the Right Now show and things like that on there. Yeah,
that's awesome. I'm on Apple right now, so I'm a little disappointed, but
yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but they're never going to make it easy for us, and that's fine.
No, that's true. And your dad's got a new book coming out too, right?
Yeah, well, I just got that back from the indexer today, so that'll go to the printers, I guess, Monday, and then we'll see. It's basically his attitude is this needs to be out now. Yeah. So normally you'd have a date where you'd go, right, I'm going to do some kind of pre-release stuff and whatever. But for him, it's like just it'll come out ASAP.
Yeah. He's amazing. Does he just lock himself in the room and just write until he can't write anymore?
Pretty much, yeah. He's up at silly o'clock in the morning every morning, and then he'll have an afternoon nap, and then he'll get back on till silly o'clock at night. Yeah, pretty relentless, really.
Wow, it's so inspiring. What's the website? People.
So that's just davidicke.com. My dad's website. Yeah, so I run the website stuff. So all the stories on there, and there's links through to Iconic and everything else and all the videos and stuff. So
perfect.
It's all one big hub.
Yeah, it's awesome. If you haven't plugged in, plug in now because they're always ahead of everything, and there's just so much information there that you can learn from and just advance this whole thing. And again, you can just show someone, hey, have you seen this? That's a great place to go to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stories there, I mean, there's a few staff writers and stuff, but generally they're just stories that are shared from mainstream outlets.
Mhm.
And we're just sort of putting some context in to
Yeah.
what they're telling you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Gareth, for being with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Yeah. And best to you and best to the family and hi to your dad.
Yes, I shall pass that on.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yes, take care.
You too.
Bye.
If the naturally inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862. If the naturally inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.